I want to be really honest and share my thoughts, my concerns, and my mixed feelings about AI and its impact on developers. My name's Becca. I'm a full-time software engineer, part-time Pilates instructor, so let's get straight into the topic. AI has been around already for quite a while, but it feels like right now things are currently changing quite fast. No one knows exactly what our careers will look like in the future or exactly how much our role will change or will need to adapt. All we know is that our roles will definitely change, and they're already changing today. We're constantly hearing about different companies encouraging the use of AI and getting more and more developers to use different AI tools. Some companies even replacing junior developers in favor of AI. There are a lot of different opinions on this, and some companies use AI more widely than others, whereas others are more skeptical of it. But there are a lot more statistics around the benefits that AI is providing. Maybe it's making people more productive. And there are also different statistics that show that it can actually make you less productive. There are different stats around how much companies are getting from AI and how much they're using it. For example, you have Google, who have announced that 75% of their code is now AI generated. So the idea of AI becoming more prevalent and replacing developers is now no longer theoretical. It's a very real thing. I wanted to talk about my thoughts and how it feels as someone working in this industry. And I'd love to hear your thoughts too. I'd love to know if you agree, if you disagree. So let me know in the comments below. The first thing on my mind is that I think AI has the danger of making me into a lazy developer if not used correctly. AI is so convenient. It makes it really convenient to find out information, to write the code, to do all of those little tasks that you need to do. And it's almost too convenient. And I think we have a problem with convenience in modern society because, yes, certain things are so much better than they used to be. We are more efficient. We're able to find out information. We're able to educate ourselves a lot more easily, and information is a lot more accessible compared to before. But I also think that too much of something is also not good. When you can get an overwhelmingly large amount of information and huge amounts of code generated super quickly or at super high quality, and I'll caveat that because not all of it is high quality, but some of it definitely is, it makes you question what you're missing out on and what the trade-off is. What are you trading in exchange for that? Because there's always a trade-off with everything. And when something is that easy and you don't have to work that hard for it, you get used to that convenience and it can start to make you lazy. I've personally found this myself, and I found it becomes easier and easier to just rely on AI and to stop thinking for yourself. Instead of sitting with a problem and formulating my own ideas and thinking things through, leaving time to struggle through the problem, it becomes easier to just let AI do the work. And through doing that, you miss out on a lot of other things that you might gain from doing the work yourself. In theory, I could go and search through documentation. I could read through loads of forums, and I could sit there and try and work through the problem and work through the struggle. But when you have the added pressure of deadlines and different timelines, it's really tempting to kind of lean into AI more and more. And this can be dangerous if you become too trusting of it, because we know that AI isn't 100% accurate. You don't want to end up so lazy that you're not even reading the code that it's generating, because that's where you start to introduce different bugs and different problems that you might not even realize. So with all this added convenience, you still need to think about what the trade-offs are. So has your code quality reduced because you're not checking the solutions properly? Have your critical thinking skills reduced? Are you still using your brain in order to come to that solution? Because again, there is always that trade-off. So check that the trade-off isn't more damaging than the wins of that convenience. Think about what happens to our skills if we rely on that convenience every single day. Because I've personally noticed that it becomes harder to resist that pull towards reaching for AI to figure things out, even when I know that I could figure it out myself. And then the more you rely on something external to do the work for you, the less you're using your own internal skills and the less you're building on those skills. Everything is about practice, right? So the less you use something, the more likely you are to forget it, and those skills will diminish. And the more you rely on AI, the more dependent you become on it, and the harder it is to break away from it. And it becomes this constant repeating cycle. And then I think what happens if there's this serious production issue where you get a lot of junior developers who won't know how to solve issues without the help of AI. Because again, AI won't have the context of everything in its current state. And this could lead to serious problems down the line if no one is able to think for themselves or think for different situations that don't fit a specific context. Are we going to end up with loads of developers in the future who don't know how to debug systems and figure out complex problems when they're at really urgent times? And this is where I've been going back and forward in my head, because maybe our required skill set is just changing. Maybe we don't need to be really great anymore at figuring out all the small technical details. Maybe we just need to be able to communicate with AI effectively and have that zoomed out overall big picture thinking. It's really hard to say what the future will look like, and I don't think anyone really knows the answers to this yet. And at the same time as having some of those concerns around AI, I can't pretend that the benefits aren't huge. One of the biggest ways I've seen AI help me be more productive as a developer is how quickly I can find answers to things. I used to spend ages Googling things, trying to figure things out by searching different Stack Overflow threads, reading loads of documentation, having multiple different tabs open. Now I can ask those questions in one place and ask follow-up questions. I can have conversations with AI and I can go back and forth to find the answers I need, and I can use it as that self-learning tool, and this speeds up the whole learning process. It does it so much that now when working without the use of AI, it can feel like taking a step backwards. I've become so used to this fast way of finding out information and being able to ask those follow-up questions that I actually don't know how I'd survive without it now. And that in itself is a little bit worrying. Maybe it's fine because maybe this is the direction of our career and that is the future. But what happens if it is taken away? What happens if it becomes too unaffordable, or companies don't have access to it because of the costs, because of maybe potential security risks, or all of these things that we might not know about yet? That is a worry in itself. And that's a really strange feeling, because it doesn't feel good when you realize that when it's taken away, you might end up being slower, or you might not feel as productive. Your output might not be as high quality as it may be if you had that help. And that can kind of leave you feeling a little bit inadequate in your abilities. But maybe that's also an insecurity thing, because obviously we can't expect to compete with AI and the speed at which AI is able to gather all of that information. No human can compete with that. So maybe it shouldn't be a big deal, or as big a deal as I'm thinking it as. AI can't do my job, but it can definitely do parts of it a lot quicker than I can. And that makes me feel so much smaller in comparison. Something else I've also noticed is the difference in how motivated I feel when solving problems. In the past, if I spent hours trying to figure out a solution and finally figured it out, the sense of satisfaction that I felt after that was huge. And I'm sure many developers can relate to this feeling of working through a problem, working through the struggle, and then that satisfaction when something finally clicks and you get it right. AI removes a lot of that struggle. And that's definitely good in some ways because it's not nice being frustrated and stressed, obviously, but it removes that rewarding aspect of it at the end. The feeling isn't quite the same when something else has figured it out for you. Now, the process of working through a problem is obviously very different. I'm going back and forth with the AI. I'm asking it questions. I'm asking follow-up questions. I'm communicating with it in a different way to how I was solving problems before. And it's not necessarily a bad thing in itself. There are different skills associated with that. But personally, I don't feel like the reward is as great as it used to. I've also noticed that I don't feel as mentally stimulated as I used to. And maybe that one's on me. Maybe I'm not using AI in the right way. Maybe I'm not using tools in the way that I should be. So if you have any suggestions, do leave them in the comments below because I'm still figuring that one out. Another change is how it affects my focus. I used to be able to get stuck into a problem and enter that flow state. And that's something I find really hard to do now because the whole process has changed with AI. It's not you fully immersed into a problem by yourself. It's now you communicating with AI, going back and forth and spending time waiting for responses. And then also it's spending that time reading the responses. This personally takes me out of that flow state, and it's very hard to achieve that same feeling. And I personally don't find that as enjoyable because I really love that feeling of being lost in some deep work, which I'm struggling to achieve with AI. Again, maybe it's how I'm using it, so do let me know if you have any suggestions. Another thing I didn't fully expect is how mentally draining it can sometimes feel working with AI. Yes, AI can definitely help your process. It can help you be more efficient and it can help take some of that mental fatigue away from you. But in other ways, it can also add lots of extra effort and add extra mental fatigue. There's so much more reading now, reading of long responses and reading of AI-generated code. AI can generate hundreds and hundreds of lines of code in seconds, and you need to make sure you are actually reading it because it's so easy for bugs and errors to slip into the code. So there's also that mental fatigue of constantly trying to search for these. And yes, you definitely always had to review code before AI, but with the amount that AI is outputting, especially if there's a pressure to get more code pushed out because of the help of AI, this means there's a lot more work to read and potentially a lot more bugs to try and catch. You also have to stay focused to make sure that AI is doing the correct thing and isn't heading in the wrong direction. You spend a lot more time going back and forth, evaluating code, and kind of supervising a lot of what AI is doing rather than doing the work yourself. And all of this going back and forth with AI involves a lot of reading, but also a lot of pausing and waiting around. And I find that quite tiring. AI still has plenty of flaws. It can lose the context. It can forget about what you said a few messages ago. It can forget things. It can go off course into a completely different direction. And it can be so confident that it's right, even when it's clearly wrong. And this can sometimes be very draining because you're now constantly having to manage the AI as well. It's just a whole different type of work that may not be as enjoyable in certain cases. The group I worry about the most is junior developers. We've already seen a massive decrease in junior developer roles. I know that it's not all because of AI. So a few years ago, software engineers were very highly in demand. They were very well paid and everyone wanted to be a software developer. Everyone went away and learned how to code, and now the industry has shifted. There are so many more developers than there are jobs, and there are less opportunities, less choice, and fewer higher salaries. And AI adds another layer to this. There are so many companies out there who either have already or who are very tempted to replace their junior developers with AI tools and AI workflows. But this is very dangerous in my opinion, because what happens further down the line in the future when there's no one to fill the senior positions? These companies are focusing on the short-term goals of increasing efficiency and cutting costs, but they're not thinking enough about their long-term goals. If we focus on only productivity and efficiency, we have to think about what we're losing in that process of doing so. The people and the culture inside a company are what bring the good work. And it's humans that have that empathy, that have that understanding, that are good at communication and collaboration. And these are all of the things that drive a successful business. These are the things that directly impact the quality of products or services that businesses offer. And efficiency and speed is not the only focus, or shouldn't be the only focus. There's also a risk around skill development. So if early career developers are relying too heavily on AI in order to do their work from the very start, they risk not being able to develop those critical thinking skills, to develop those problem-solving skills, and develop the skills they need further down the line. If you just get used to following what AI tells you to do, or just copy and pasting the code that AI generates, it becomes so much harder to think for yourself and think problems through. This makes it harder to understand why you're doing what you're doing, or why the code works and why it's done in a particular way. And this is personally sometimes how I feel. I'm past the junior developer stage now, but I still feel like I haven't been in this industry or been coding for long enough to reliably allow AI to do all of the work for me. I think that AI can be incredibly useful for junior and mid-level engineers, but I also think we're the group that are most at risk. More senior engineers already have strong foundations and they have years of experience of seeing real problems and working through different varied problems that AI is likely to just support their thinking and help them be more productive. Whereas junior and mid-level engineers, I feel like their thinking is more likely to be replaced by AI if it's not used in the correct way. I think that junior and mid-level engineers still need to know their foundations, and obviously this isn't all bad. I do think that if junior and mid-level engineers can learn to use AI thoughtfully, carefully, and responsibly, it can definitely improve their processes, increase their productivity, and improve the quality of their work. No one really knows how much our jobs will change. All we know for certain is that our jobs will change and are already changing. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that some of the fear and the panic that I'm seeing online is definitely exaggerated and is not all necessary. This industry has always evolved and technology has always advanced and has always reshaped the way people work. This is just another one of those shifts. Part of me is not too worried because I know that I'll be able to adapt and learn the new skills or work in new ways in whatever way is needed for the way the trends and the future roles are shaping out to be. And it's not like I'm super passionate about only one particular way of working, because I have multiple interests, and I think that is probably a great strength in this time. So I would say that if you do have multiple things you're interested in, play on that strength and lean into all of those different skills. I enjoy problem solving, and if you're a software engineer, you probably do too. So if we think about it like that, the way the world is going or the way this industry is going, problem solving will always be a part of it. So even if the tools and the workflows change, that core skill of problem solving will always be needed. It will just mean different types of challenges for us. AI will change how we work, but developers have always adapted to new tools, new languages, new ways of building software, and we'll be able to adapt to this too. It probably won't replace our skills entirely. It will just change the types of skills that we do need. The goal is to use it intentionally so that we can enhance how we learn, the types of skills that we build, and the types of things that we create. In my next video, I'll be sharing practical tips on how you can use AI without losing your skills. So make sure you subscribe if you want to see that. And I'd love to know your thoughts, so leave a comment below, let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the stuff in this video, and I'll leave my links in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, hopefully see you next time.